son said, why don't you come down and go? I said, I think I will.
Well, the guy that stocks cooler section, the grocery store at home,
Uh-huh.
his grandson is what he's. So permanent, I've talked about.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, well, and I was really disappointed that they met their demise, but I'll be honest, I never expected them to go that far.
Well, I think they really sort of surprised themselves,
Yeah,
but it was good.
well, the coach has been there. I think he's a great guy. It's really kind of beginning to come together, and I bet hopefully he'll continue to have the kind of, it takes a few really good athletes to be able to put it off like that. It's like when Hawkinsville had your, I can't remember the guy's name there, but the big guy who ended up going to Georgia. Yeah, I mean, and you don't always have those, but he's,
Okay, good.
luckily has
Great,
finally
thank
had
you.
their turn and had it.
And we have legal approval.
Yes, please. Legal request. Perfect. They're the perfect in case of emergencies. They're like, they walk in 10 minutes. Like they
I'm
look
the
like-
same way. So,
I know.
that's right. That's exactly right. Well, that was good. How'd your pecans
Busted
turn
some
out?
drug out. I mean, if I got pulled over, I was like, let me see it first. Okay.
And I didn't spray because I didn't have one.
Sure. Oh, that's good. How many years old now?
They are going on 5 years, it's about another, to have a decent, I mean,
Okay.
next year, we did some extensive trimming,
Yeah.
they're looking good. They're looking really good.
Great. I'll tell you what, y'all have got plenty of
I
pecan
don't
trees
think, I don't think she
in
will.
Alaska County and that part of the world now.
So, okay.
Yeah. I was wondering about
I don't
that.
know with me there.
So, I know that you know the two guys who used to be with King and Spalding. Davis is one of them.
Yeah, they bought that property.
Yep, of their, and they're calling it King something, yeah. But anyway, but they have gone all in on the pecans.
Boy, they sure did, they got a crowded,
We need a bonfire.
Yeah,
crowded,
It is cold.
Jordan Congress Association had a state meeting last year and toured their
Who do we have on the line?
that's pretty good.
yeah. That's a
Sir, can you hear us?
good place for them to put litigation money in.
It's supposed to be true.
I'm fixing to cut some timber on my property.
Who?
I've got mine's a small farm, I've got about 250 acres.
Do we have anyone on the line right now?
Hey, this is Mark.
Yeah,
Glenn's on the line.
Perfect. We'll be
They're all right.
excellent. We'll be beginning shortly. You are live in the room.
Is Glenn on?
Hey, Dale. Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, that's good.
Good morning. I won't fashion so
I'm good. Mr. Chairman, when you're ready, we're ready.
I was gonna say, it's 9:30.
I tell you what, Bill, finances will set the pace here, and I mean, you're gonna challenge us to make
I guess I got half on Facebook. Yep.
It's amazing, isn't it?
All righty, I'm gonna call the meeting to order. It's 9:30. It's actually 9:31, Tuesday, December 14th. Anna, will you call the roll, please?
Yes, sir. Mr. Joseph B. Wilkinson, Jr.,
Here.
Mr. Bob Kruger,
Here.
Mr. Bill Gross,
Here.
Commissioner Mark Williams, Ms. Joy Birch Meeks,
here.
Dr. Buster Evans,
Here.
Mr. Glenn Willard,
Here.
Mr. Dale Atkins.
Here.
Mr. Tripp Tollison will be absent today. Sir, you have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. Have a quorum. There were 2 public comments received online for this meeting. I will read the names and subjects into the record. John Stevenson, Master Plan Update. Susan Inman, Coastal Advocate with 100 Miles, Master Plan Update Petition. All right. We will start with the Historic Preservation Conservation Committee, Dale Atkins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At this time, I will call on Jeff Moore to give the Historic Preservation Conservation Committee report.
Thank you. Yank.
Morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
I'm here today just to give you a quick update on our Cycle 22 Coastal Incentive Grant project on Fortson Pond. Fortson Pond is a tidal marsh fragment right when you come onto the island. It persists in a chronically impaired state that results in very little tidal flushing, and the result of that is poor water quality and just low overall ecosystem health. I've actually been monitoring this system since I started here in 2013. And this being our 3rd coastal incentive grant on this project, we're finally starting to move the ball towards restoration, and this was the first step towards that. The images on the screen and in your packet show aerial views of the 2 areas that we're going to be looking at today, and hopefully over the next few months we'll start to see some differences based on some of the projects that we've completed. The one on the left is Fortson Pond, as you can see, with very little water. And then the picture on the right is of the bridge area along Crane Bike Path. This next slide just is just here to orient you on the project for those of you that may not be familiar with the site. You have Fortson Pond circled in red, and then you have the bridge and the culvert, which I'll mention more about here in a minute, in green and blue respectively. And those are along the Crane Bike Path that connects the historic district to the beach village, kind of a main limb of our bike path system. This picture shows the kind of the before scene of the bridge area. As you can see, there's a lot of bricks and concrete rubble, and actually there was a toilet and a few other random pieces of debris in here. It created a weir type obstruction. It prevented tidal water from being able to come in effectively and efficiently, and it would only actually go over that debris pile at certain points in the tide. So we actually had Philip Kidney and his crew use the new excavator that y'all approved a few months ago, and they removed almost 30 yards of debris. That's almost 3 full dump truck loads out of an area that's less than 40 feet long. So here you can see the after. We actually installed, what this debris was here initially was bank stabilization. We didn't want to put rubble or granite or anything hard structure back in. So we installed a living shoreline. A living shoreline just allows it to grow and move with the ecosystem. So as the water comes through, it protects the bank, it stabilizes the bank, but it allows it to grow with the plants and things in the future. The picture here actually shows it not completely finished. I've got to order plants from South Carolina. We'll plant plants directly into this matrix, and then that'll make it look a little more consistent with the rest of the stream. The next area that we focused on was a culvert, a little bit further south than the bridge, closer to Dairy Queen. As you can see here, we have a culvert. It was severely undersized. It was installed back in the early state era, what we can guess. But it was installed too high and it was too small. So yet again, water could only flow through at certain parts of the tide, and water wouldn't even make it into Fortson Pond unless it was above 7 feet. And if you know our tides, 7 feet is only about a third of the tides that we actually witness, and not even at every reach of the tide. So yet again, Philip's crew came in. They installed a culvert, a 39-inch elliptical. That about doubled the volume of the water that could move through there. And another key component of what they did is they actually lowered it to the stream elevation. So what that does is it allows water through more parts of the tide. So here you can see this is before and after. This is at the same part of the tidal cycle. But you can see on the before picture, the culvert is completely out of the water. It's not doing its job. On the right, you can see the after. The culvert's actually at the proper elevation and allows water to move through a lot more efficiently and effectively. And that's it. Is there any questions?
Done. Thank you very much. We have no action required on this report.
Mr. Chairman, I have a comment or question.
Yes.
Yeah, could you share with the board how much the estimated cost for this project is and where we are on that scale?
So it's a 2-year project. It's a coastal incentive grant that's funded by NOAA through the Department of Natural Resources. It's about a little over 40 grand all in. I think from the authority it's close to 10 to 15,000. But we're in year 1. We've had a couple delays with the project due to COVID and due to scheduling of contractors and getting the supplies and materials in. And then we had to wait on the excavator again to actually conclude the work. So we're still in year 1, but we're working towards it, and we've finished the construction phase and we're moving into the monitoring phase to see how effective the project actually was.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yank, have you noticed any wildlife migrating in since the construction's been complete? Any change?
We're getting a lot more water in. The thing with Fortson Pond is when water does come in, it brings in small fish and invertebrates and things, and then the water doesn't completely drain out. It leads to kind of poor water quality conditions, and the birds come in and eat what's there. So, I mean, it's good for the birds, but it's bad for the ecosystem overall. So we're kind of in a transition phase. We're seeing more water in Fortson Pond, but we're not really seeing the overall ecosystem effect yet, and that's what we're hopefully going to be able to tell in the next couple months.
Great. Thank you. Let's see. Dale, you have anything else?
Any other questions, comments from the board?
All right, I'm going to move now to
Hearing
open.
none, Mr. Chairman, that concludes our report.
Thank you. Open the floor for public comment. We will now open the floor for any public comments. Public comments are limited to 3 minutes for each person. Public comments. I don't hear any.
I'm Beverly Hopkins, a resident. I just wanted to give Yank a quick thank you for this update. I've been wondering what was going on. I'm looking forward to it smelling less badly in the summertime.
Thank you. Okay. Any others? All righty. I'm going to go to the Finance Committee. Bill Gross.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hey, has the weather been great this year? And I think the November financial highlights will point to that. Revenues for November were $2,374,569, which is $468,000 more than budgeted for the month. Year-to-date revenues reflect a favorable $2.8 million variance from budget and a favorable $4.2 million variance from prior year-to-date. Locations with the largest variances from budget were hotel motel taxes, which were $1,472,000 higher than budget for the month. Hotel revenues would be higher than anticipated, which results in higher hotel motel taxes paid to JIA. Business lease revenues were $131,000 higher than budget for the month. Business as well as hotels continue to produce revenues that are higher than expected. Parking revenues were $50,000 more than budget. Annual pass sales were $16,000 more than budget, and daily parking fees were $34,000 more than budget. Campground revenues were $51,000 better than budget for November. 5 months into the fiscal year, campground revenues have exceeded the year-to-date budget by $242,000. Expenses for November were $1,976,648, which is $233,000 or 11% less than budget for the month. Year-to-date expenses were year-to-date expenses were $1 million less than budget and were 1.7 more than prior year-to-date expenses. The largest expense variance for the month were human resources, $88,000 less due to vacant positions, both full and part-time. Repairs, facilities and grounds were $64,000, and supplies and materials $50,000 less than budget for the month. Their timing variances and should be spent by the end of the fiscal year. Net operating cash income for November was $397,921, which is $701,000 better than the budgeted net operating loss of $303,000. Year-to-date net operating cash is $3.9 million better than budget and $2.5 million better than prior year-to-date income. Traffic stats for November was 82,455 vehicles, which was 12,335 less vehicles than November 2020. Year-to-date traffic count is 1,349,000 vehicles, which is 299,964 vehicles more than the prior calendar-to-date traffic. As a comparison to pre-pandemic numbers, our year-to-date traffic counts are 189,000 more vehicles than in 2019 year-to-date counts. Hotel stats. Revenues reported by the hotels were $3.6 million, which is $1.5 million more than November 2020. This is a 73.8% increase in revenues. Occupancy rate, 52.2%, which is up from 41.1%. Revenue per available room was $89.57, which is up from $60.97 in November of 2020. Average daily rate, $171.59, which is up from $148.17. Year-to-date revenues reported by the hotels is $57.3 million, which is $22.3 million more than year-to-date 2020 revenues. Occupancy rate was 66.7%. which is up from 57%. Revenue per available room was $138.75, which is up from $97.50 for year-to-date 2020. ADR, or average daily rate, was $207.89, which is up from $170.92. Those are the financial highlights for November. Next, I'd like Marjorie Johnson, our Chief Accounting Officer, to do presentation request for approval of firefighting supplemental pay grant.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So we were notified of a grant that was made available through the Coronavirus State Fiscal Recovery Fund through OPB. And these grant funds would be used to provide a $1,000 pay supplement to public safety officials and first responders. And this is due to their support through COVID. And the JIA would have to make the payments through our payroll process, and then the state would reimburse us for the $1,000 plus the FICA expense of that. We have 10 full-time public safety and first responder staff that would qualify for the pay supplement. So the total amount to be reimbursed for the grant would be $10,765. And they have not paid out the funds yet, but we have been approved for the grant. We're just waiting on them to give us the final approval on the amount. So if anybody has any questions, I'll be happy to answer those for them.
Okay.
And if not, the staff hereby request board approval to accept the Public Safety Officials and First Responders Supplement Grant in the amount of $10,765 for the payment of the $1,000 pay supplement as provided by the grant.
Is there a motion to recommend the approval of the firefighter supplemental pay grant as recommended by Marjorie?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Marjorie.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, that concludes the Finance Committee report.
Thank you, Mr. Gross. Going to move to public comment. We'll now open the floor for any public comments. Public comments are limited to 3 minutes for each person. Don't hear any. All right, then I'm going to move to the Human Resources Committee, Dr. Buster Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At this time, we would call on Director of Human Resources, Jenna Johnson, to come forward and give us a request for approval of a loss prevention policy update. Jenna, thank you.
Hey there, good morning. Get this up a little bit. Okay. Yes, please. The update for your consideration is for the loss prevention policy. And this is more of a housekeeping item that provides a little bit more guidance that all JIA employees would be expected or are expected to cooperate with employee theft investigation if an investigation were to happen, and that appropriate JIA personnel would also participate in the prosecution of said employee theft investigation. So it is the staff recommendation that the board consider the updated loss prevention policy for approval.
Is there a motion to recommend the approval of the loss prevention policy update as recommended by staff?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there discussion? If not, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, like sign. Mr. Chairman, it sounds like it passed, and that concludes our business from the Human Resources Committee this month.
Great, thanks, Dr. Evans. It did pass. I'm now going to open the floor for any public comments. Public comments are limited to 3 minutes for each person. Okay, don't hear any comments. I was going to move next to the Marketing Committee, Joy Birch Meeks. Now, are these decorations from?
Pardon?
These decorations?
Yes. Aren't these wonderful? The everyone has one at their station. Alexa, if you want to go ahead and start coming up. It reminds us that it is one of our most favorite times of the year on Jekyll, and if you haven't had a chance to see the lights, please make every effort to do so because they are worth it.
Mm-hmm.
we are excited and celebrating Holly Jolly, but Alexa this morning is going to look forward to 2022 when we celebrate the 75th celebration of Jekyll. So, Alexa?
Thank you, Joy. Yes, she's very right about the lights. We actually got a comment on social media the other day that where someone said that the lights on Jekyll are the next best thing to the North Pole. So I was very excited about that.
I'm still a big fan of shrimpmas. I just want you to know. I like this.
That's okay. We hear that from time to time too. So yes, as Joyce said, we are kind of coming to the end, the closing of this year and looking ahead at 2022. So we have had or been spending the last several months talking about and planning for an anniversary celebration. So 2022, we will be celebrating the 75th anniversary of Jekyll Island State Park. I talked about, and I think I gave a little bit of a preview on this a few board meetings back, but we have been moving full speed ahead. And so this really will be a year of celebration. 2022 marks that the establishment of Jekyll Island as a state park, and it's purchased by the state of Georgia and the progress made. So we have a lot of things planned throughout the year to really highlight that. Of course, the first being our 75th soiree, which is happening Friday, January 28th, at the Jekyll Island Club Resort, which is really paying homage to the very first dinner that was held at the club when the island opened to the citizens of Georgia and beyond. So that is a wonderful community event open to the entire community. We have a lot of tickets sold already for this event. So we're very excited. We're going to have some really interesting entertainment. And then looking beyond that, we have several other activities and events planned. We'll be inviting the Georgia Sandman out on March 5th to do a nice, unique sand sculpture to signify that anniversary. You can kind of see his work there in that picture. He's very good at what he does. We have a vintage trailer show happening at our campground. We also will be holding a Beach Village block party August 6th. It'll be kind of a end of summer kickoff event. We'll have vintage cars, throwback musical performances, fun activities for families. And of course, the 75th will be infused in a lot of our signature events, including Shrimp and Grits, which we're very excited. We'll be returning November 4th through the 6th. And then a lot of other surprises. I don't want to give it all away now, but very, very excited about what we have in store. And then you'll also see this kind of come alive in all of our marketing and branding. We are working on and we'll be rolling out in January some new brand advertising. So these are kind of a sneak peek at a series of ads we'll be creating that really speak to what the 75th anniversary means. We talked to a lot of visitors. We hear from them and they say to us, we've been coming for generations. We've been making family traditions. And so this was really inspired by that. And the copy on this ad actually reads, since 1947, Jekyll has welcomed generations of explorers, wanderers, and off-the-beaten pathers. From first-time visitors to those who've never left, everyone agrees. There's no better place to discover a new tradition. Your story begins here. So this is, like I said, will be representative in our brand advertising. We also have some fun installations that we're working on here. You'll see on the left the original Fabulous Jekyll Island sign that was up in the 1960s, and we're looking to kind of bring that back in a fun way for the year. So on our causeway, you will see an iteration of that as well. And we have some other signage that will also be joining us out on the entrance. So do stay tuned and keep an eye out for that. And then you'll also see that branding on all of our digital assets. So our homepage will get a refresh. It'll introduce the new logo that we've created. We'll have an interactive timeline, and those will be assets that'll be up through the rest of the year. So very excited to introduce all these things. Like I said, this is just a taste of what's to come, but hopefully you'll begin to see all of this kind of roll out starting in mid-January.
Thank you so much.
Any questions?
That's great. Any questions?
And I should mention too, that this is a team effort. It's department-wide. Marketing does not take all the responsibility for this. Our facilities team is developing a lot of these activations. The Georgia Sea Turtle Center is going to be naming several of their turtle patients after elements of the 75th. So it is really going to be something island-wide.
Fantastic. Mr.
Also, Alex, you might mention the event in January, the dinner is in conjunction with Friends of Historic Jekyll Island.
Yes, thank you. So that is in conjunction, as Jones mentioned, conjunction with Friends of Historic Jekyll Island. They hold an annual dinner in January, which is a fundraising opportunity, and they, then turn around and contribute those funds back to projects with in our historic district. We're very appreciative of the funds that they raise from that dinner. So this year we worked in partnership with them to hold our dinner in January, and they will be the fundraising benefactor for this event.
It's going to be a fun time, Mr. Chairman, so we're looking
Absolutely.
forward to 2022. If there are no questions, that concludes our report.
Excellent, thank you. So I'll now open the floor for any public comments. Public comments are limited to 3 minutes for each person.
Mr. Chairman, before you hear public comments, I'd like to add a little comment to the marketing report.
Yes, sir.
My wife and I came down here and took the Holly Jolly Christmas trolley tour of lights on Saturday night. And not only were the lights fantastic and amazing, but the driver of the vehicle pulling the trolley, that young man has nerves of steel and an adept hand on the wheel, because we maneuvered through all the traffic with scarcely a bobble. And it was quite an amazing event. We really enjoyed it, and I urge everyone to partake of that.
Thank you so much. Right. Yes, sir.
My name's Al Tate. I'm a resident on the island, and I think this is the appropriate time to just mention that this afternoon at 3 o'clock, the Jekyll Singers will be performing at the Great Dunes Park outdoors, and I wanted to make sure that everybody was aware of that, and hopefully you'll come and enjoy the Jekyll Singers. Thank you.
Thank you, Al. Appreciate it. Any other? All righty, let's see. Legislative Committee, we do not have a report. And Council, do I move to Committee of the Whole? Okay. So that I don't make a move without my attorney. And let's see, we go to Melissa. We're looking at the 2021 update on the 2014 Jekyll Island Master Plan. Counselor, I turn to you.
Yes, sir, thank you. As a precursor to taking up this agenda item, and which I will get into more, is that this agenda item, which is consideration before you for the 2020 update to the Jekyll Island 2014 Master Plan. We have received, as of this morning, no objection from the Jekyll Island Authority Legislative Oversight Committee to us taking up this agenda item. We can now move forward with hearing it. That being said, I am going to turn it over to Lee Elkins from UGA to do the fun stuff, and then she'll turn it back over to me to get into all the legalities.
Thank you, Melissa. Good morning.
Good morning.
So I'm going to walk you through, again, the update to the master plan. This relied on the great work done in creating the 2014 master plan and the course that set to produce this update. We were glad to have the input of residents, of visitors, of staff, of experts on various topics to inform this plan. And just as you can see in the table of contents, it's organized essentially the same way that the 2014 plan was organized. A primary focus of this master plan update is the importance of balancing capacity on the island. The 2014 plan addressed the revitalization and redevelopment of Jekyll, which has been tremendously successful. And now that success has led to the need to address the capacity issues on the island. And the authority funded a carrying capacity study, not something that all municipalities, for example, will do, because growth is what you want. But the need to address that and realize that there are limitations is important with Jekyll Island. The Jekyll Island Authority's mission, vision, and values are critical to continue to reiterate as part of this planning process. And again, I mentioned a little bit about how the update was done, with stakeholder participation, with interviews with board members, with participation from staff, with experts, with a town hall and 2 separate public comment periods, including a survey that had over 14,000 participants. The accomplishments of the authority since the 2014 plan have been significant, and you can look outside and see those in the redevelopment and revitalization of many of the hotels and other important parts of infrastructure, as well as just the events. I will add that I did drive through the lights last night, and it was fantastic and magnificent, and we enjoyed that very much. We also relied heavily on this plan update in the plans that have been done besides the carrying capacity and infrastructure study, like the conservation plan. Maintaining the unique character of the island, which includes limits on development, and carefully managing those boundaries where developed and undeveloped lands meet, is a priority, not just for the residents, for the visitors, but also for the authority. We pulled out some facts and figures, and these are a little difficult to read. Many of these highlight great successes, but we also needed to acknowledge things like the pandemic led to some economic losses. So it's important also to see how the island is recovering and continues to recover from that downturn. The plan update addresses land use on Jekyll. You as a board recognize the importance of limiting residential and commercial development on Jekyll Island. This plan calls for no new development. It does not say that additional development should be done, and in fact relies again, as I said, on the carrying capacity and understanding what are the maximums on the island, how many visitors at one time can be on the island, how many cars can be on the island, because the importance of preserving the natural environment and what makes Jekyll so special is just so critically important. The plan, again, it mimics the 2014 plan in the topics that it goes through: economic sustainability, historic and cultural resources, natural resources, recreation, and transportation infrastructure and municipal services. Within each of these sections are kind of the recommendations or goals to be addressed over the next 5 years. We also did some mapping updates, as you'll recall. Part of this was just to make some corrections. Technology's better. We can see things better. We have better ways to mapping. And what this led to was a reduction in overall land classified as developed by about 15 acres. So these are several of the maps that are included in the plan. As you'll recall, in the 2014 plan, the authority moved from using defined land uses to land function to classify land use. So it went from listing things as recreation or commercial or residential to grouping those as developed. And then the other landscape are identified as undeveloped. And so the 2 new maps that were added show the lands that were taken out of developed, including that beautiful beach prairie area is what we call it, kind of its oceanfront. And then some areas you may have had to set standard road widths, to set some standardization things. So these 2 maps show developed lands as now seen. And again, this plan update reduces the overall land available for development by about 15 acres. We've also included an appendix that'll be available in the print version that's really a summary of the 5-year goals. Again, it's a 5-year plan. There are no short-term or long-term goals, because I think 5 years is kind of a short term. It's kind of a good frame of reference to think in. And so everything in here, it's kind of a to-do list of recommendations that are short-term goals to be accomplished. Again, it's significantly influenced by the recommendations not only in the 2014 plan, but the carrying capacity and infrastructure study, as well as the conservation plan. There are also going to be 3 other appendices available online. Just as the 2014 plan had the appendices for that plan are exclusively online, none of them were printed. We will have Appendix B, which is the town hall report, Appendix C, which is the online survey responses, and Appendix D, which were the comments received after the October board meeting, all available online. There will be links to those in the online document. And there will be addresses for them to link to in the printed plan. But we figured that that's about, well, it's several hundred pages. And so to print those did not seem to be the best idea. And that is the master plan update.
Lee, how many printed documents are you actually looking to provide?
You know, we haven't really talked about a number yet.
Okay.
So it's.
But more than likely similar to the conservation plan, in that there would be limited printed documents and
Exactly.
mostly online.
It's almost 100 pages in full, and that's without the B, C, and D appendices. So it's not an efficient print, I will say, to have it printed.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, before the board considers taking action, I'd like to take just a minute to review some of the items that Lee has gone over, just to highlight and just to review kind of where we've come from, if that's in order. And
I think it would be more than in order.
I think that as I look at where we are and we talk about where we've been, where we've come from the last few years, as far as balance and studies and actions, I think it's really important for us to go back, even as Lee did, to the 2014 master plan and what it contained. And I think it's important to remember that overwhelmingly the 2014 plan was supported by the state legislature. It was also supported by Georgia Green Law. It was also supported by the Georgia Conservancy, and it was also supported by the Initiative to Protect Jekyll Island. And all of those folks were intimately involved in that plan, and its purpose really was to set boundaries, specific boundaries for Jekyll Island, and so that in the future we weren't just talking about some percentage of some unknown land mass as far as accretion and how marshes were changing and that sort of thing. It also allowed limited acres for development, 20 acres for any purpose and up to 46 acres for public safety, parks, and utilities. Since that plan was adopted by this board, only 5.8 acres have been approved for any purpose since that plan. And those have been utility and public safety. In fact, there was an additional acreage that was allowed in that plan for the campground expansion, and not all of that was even pursued, but that also went through the state process as far as the campground expansion, which Noel actually will talk about later on the program today on the agenda. There's also been land since then that has been returned to the undeveloped category and given back to the authority. Land down near the where the new Marriott courtyard is. The update to the 2014 plan received much public discussion, and lots of misinformation seems to have been circulated, in my opinion, surrounding some fears that are primarily, in my opinion, associated with the proposed golf course master plan. There's been a lot of discussion of merging these two ideas since they were both pending plans. Looking back, the golf course master plan should have probably been called something like the golf improvement strategy, which is something that we've been working on, as you know, for many years. But it just so happened that the timing with the pandemic, et cetera, all ended up being kind of at the same time. My feeling is, however, that this board has shown great leadership in that you have said, let's take our time, let's look at what happens with the golf courses, and let's do deeper dives. So as you know, the golf course master plan was proposed a year ago, September. You still have not adopted it because we've continued to look at additional information because you realize the importance of getting that right. And I think that's very important for everyone to understand, because I think also if it had been if development had been the primary focus of this board, then there's no doubt in my mind that you would have already adopted the golf course master plan, and you would have also instructed us to issue RFPs to begin to look at how the plans would be considered. Mr. Chairman, with your having been Environmentalist of the Year when you were in the state legislature, I think that is the last thing on earth that would be on your plan or on your plate. So if we look at the 2014 plan, it was all about determining acreage and limiting development potential. I personally feel the 2021 update is, as Lee said a few minutes ago, is about managing capacity and programs and visitation. And I think it's interesting that the capacity study that we funded, that Lee mentioned, not many governments do that because most governments are looking for more, that we have really been utilizing that study since it was completed in 2018 in almost everything we do. As a matter of fact, later on the agenda today, you'll be considering the vendor for our horse and carriage rides. And you need to know that even those horse and carriage rides, when we looked at the number of people on the beach, and we looked at those rides from a conservation standpoint, that we made the decision to, in the RFP, limit the number of rides. And so that is one of those items when you're talking about carrying capacity that most people don't even know that that's being considered, but it is. And that's just drilling way down to show you the extent that we're going to look at capacity issues. We're using carrying capacity to influence a lot of issues, and many of them you know, and I'm just going to quickly run down some of them for you. Obviously, the gate system at the entrance. Now, that gate system, I would never say that it's exactly where we want it to be yet, but it is our second iteration of software and hardware, and we know we're an early adopter, and we are a challenge for vendors. They either say, we can have you going through there at 70 miles an hour and not stopping, or we can have you going out like you're checking out of a parking garage and at that pace. And obviously, we want something in between there. We've looked at smaller, improved venues across the island, and Noel has given you an update on those. That's all in the capacity study. Improved bike paths that are wider and safer and updated. Water and sewer improvements, and also water and sewer fee increases. Those were called for in the capacity study. We've looked at dynamic pricing for events. You've approved that. When we were having the tree lighting festival, that was approved. The 4th of July, also shrimp and grits. Scheduling events over time to curtail large influxes of vehicles. As Joy's report this morning, looking at Holly Jolly being a season now rather than all happening on one night, and then looking at the components there. And even from COVID, we learned some things in that we now are, as a result of COVID, we took the parade into the parking lots instead of having people come to Pier Road. And that became, it seemed after a couple of years to be so successful that we did it that way again this year. And so that just spreads people and it makes the whole experience better, we think. So all of those kind of things continue to get influenced. Obviously, seasonal pricing, dynamic pricing, Another thing that was called for in the capacity study that a lot of people don't recognize is it called for upgrading the golf courses and reducing the footprint of our golf courses. Campground expansion, continued investment in summer waves, not to have more people, but to have those people within the park spread out more so that the experience is more enjoyable for everybody in the park. Obviously, increased user fees, pursuit of federal and state funding grants, and Yank has given an example already this morning, and Marjorie, of some of those grants that we continue to pursue. Securing emergency equipment for natural disasters, having it in place, that was also within the capacity study. We've moved in that direction, even most recently when you approved having an excavator on site. And to continue emphasizing the natural character of Jekyll. That is absolutely spelled out in the capacity study. So there's been a lot of discussion, no doubt, as the draft manuscript has been circulated. There was discussion that there were no maps. Well, there were no maps because Lee and her team were trying to get to the point with the schedule we were on to actually insert the maps into the final document. The final version has all the photos and nice diagrams in it. I've not seen, other than just the slides yet, the final, but obviously I've read the manuscript many times. The final master plan not only will have the maps, it'll also have, it's a 5-year plan. And personally, I want to emphasize, while Lee has talked about that 5 years is a good, that everything within the plan should take place within 5 years, the recommendations. And when you think about it, 5 years is such a short period of time. I also, if I'm looking at what we're doing as an authority, either internally or as an outside party looking in, to me, a 5-year planning horizon is awesome, because it means we're not looking at a 10 or 15-year planning horizon before the board would have to come back and go through this process again. Instead, we're looking at a 5-year planning horizon. And we know that within the last 5 years, we've seen some things we've never seen before, such as the pandemic, and such as numbers that still in our budget this year, I keep referring to it as a surprise budget because we tried to catch it right, and yet the numbers still are not, they're much more than what we thought they would be. So to me, a 5-year planning horizon says if we go astray, if we make a mistake, then we'll be right back here looking to correct it and looking at how you maneuver 5 years from now. And that'll be a very public process, just like this has been. So to me, I think that's very important. I think it's also important when you look at the 2014 plan that, as Lee pointed out, most everything in that plan has been accomplished. Now, I can't say everything because there are some things that when you get into a plan, there are factors that overtake it and you go, wait a minute, because of now this federal grant or because of this, that, or the other, we shouldn't do that. Instead, we should move this way. And if that happens, we'll definitely bring that forward and we'll all talk about it. But there is flexibility always in a plan. And so I think that that's where we've been with the 2014 plan, and where obviously will be, Lee, heading into the update of the 5-year plan. So there'll be shifts and turns, and that's the nature of a planning document. And Lee, I know you've done master plans all over the state and elsewhere, and I don't suppose there's one that's never been changed, is there?
I don't think so.
So anyway, Lee very briefly mentioned one other thing that I think is so important that is included in this 2014 update. And I think you should be very proud of this. And that is, we've shown the pictures in other board meetings and in other meetings. The fact that the 21 update that in there, the coastal prairies are included to be redesignated as undeveloped.
Yeah.
And that 8.54 acres is so prevalent and such a brand of Jekyll Island. When you are driving on this island and you can see the ocean, that is very, very important, very significant. So I say that reclassifying those lands as undeveloped and adding the protection to those lands that will be now afforded, I think that is a major update accomplishment. So, Mr. Chairman, thank you for indulging me this morning. I just felt like that it would be a good thing to review some of the actions that have occurred over the past few years.
Thank you very, very much. Counselor, I guess I go to
Well, Chairman, if I could
Yes.
follow up with that with some more boring and tedious information.
I think.
Oh, Mr. Gross.
Mr. Gross.
I was going to ask
asked-
a question. Since 2014, in 2014, I was not here, but what was in the budget for conservation in 2014? I know that we currently have $600,000 in our budget annually, or close to that, but I think we went from literally nothing to.
Well, before, I got here in 2008, and Marjorie, unless you just happen to have the 2014 number on the top of your head, I got here in 2008, and I will tell you, Mr. Gross, at that time, we had one lady running around with a butterfly net. That was our conservation department. And we were spending about $40,000 a year on conservation. So since then, we've continued to look at conservation projects like Yank has shared with you this morning. And the budget for our conservation department in this year's budget is over $600,000. That is just the department headed up by Ben Carswell. That is not the Georgia Sea Turtle Center, which has a tremendous budget for conservation and specifically geared at sea turtles, as well as education, conservation education, and that budget is over $2 million this year. So there is a lot of money being spent on conservation efforts on this island.
Thank you.
Chairman and Board, you've just received an overview of the proposed 2021 master plan update. And so I just wanted to go through just a little bit of a background and some things that have taken place since we presented the initial draft to you, and then go through the requirements that were met before we take a vote. As Ms. Elkins said, that there were a lot of public input opportunities, including a stakeholder committee and external review committee. I have almost 2.5 pages of a summary of public input and notifications in my board memo that I won't go through in detail, but I'll point out some highlights. On June 16th, there was a public town hall. On September 21st, the initial draft of the 2021 update was presented to you in a public meeting, in which you authorized transmittal of it to the required state entities. At that time, a notice to the media was distributed on this, including the public hearing details and instructions on how to submit public comments and details for this board meeting. The public comments were received on the authority's website from September 21st through October 18th, and that is part of what is included in these appendices. Legal notices ran on September 22nd in the Brunswick News and the Fulton Daily Report. September 27th is when we sent the initial draft up to the Legislative Oversight Committee and the other required state entities. A revised update, which reflected changes to Appendix C, was posted on our website on October 5th. On October 14th, we had a public hearing where public comments were received. Those were subsequently posted to the website. And as a result of all the public comments, changes were made to the draft update. And one of those changes was, one of the concerns that we heard was that the 5-year plan wasn't in bullet point format. It wasn't easily accessible and readable. And so that is one of the changes that was made after the initial plan was presented to you. And that you authorized, that was sent on October 25th to the required state entities and posted on October 28th to our website. On November 16th, you ratified that transmittal to the Oversight Committee and other state entities. So we have met the legally required procedure for updating or amending the master plan. And before you today is consideration of approval. You have possible board actions. Oh, and I'm sorry, let me repeat, as I did at the very beginning, that we have received no objections from the Legislative Oversight Committee on proceeding with the master plan. If we had received objections, this today would be stayed until that could be resolved, but we have received no objections. So before you today, you could reject the proposed amendment, which will prevent JIA from updating the 2014 master plan as proposed. You can approve and adopt the 2021 update through the proposed resolution, which has been circulated amongst you prior to this meeting and included in your packet, which would allow the authority to update the 2014 master plan as proposed, or you may suggest other alternatives. Staff recommends that you approve and adopt the 2020 update and pass the proposed resolution. Adopt the proposed resolution.
So I need a motion.
Yes, sir. If we could have a motion to recommend adoption of R 2021-7, resolution adopting the 2020 update to the Jekyll Island 2014 master plan.
The chair wants to make clear that the chair will call a roll call vote.
Yes, sir.
On this motion. Is there a motion to recommend adoption of R 2021-7, resolution adopting the 2021 update to the Jekyll Island 2014 master plan as recommended by staff?
So moved.
It's been moved and second. Discussion. Okay. I'm going to call for the vote, and again, sorry to surprise, but I do want to do a roll call.
Yes, sir, absolutely. Mr. Joseph B. Wilkinson, Jr.
Aye.
Mr. Bob Kruger.
Aye.
Mr. Bill Gross.
Aye.
Commissioner Mark Williams. Commissioner Mark Williams.
Aye.
Ms. Joy Birch Meeks.
Aye.
Dr. Buster Evans.
Aye.
Mr. Glenn Willard.
Aye.
Mr. Dale Atkins.
Aye.
Sir, it's unanimous.
Okay, thank you. Motion carries. Next, I'm going to have to call on you again, Counselor.
Yes, sir. I have several on today's agenda. The next one is approval of assignment for the Holiday Inn lease. Let me switch. So the Holiday Inn on Jekyll Island is currently owned by, and the ground lease is in the name of Georgia Coast Holdings LLC. GCH, Georgia Coast Holdings, has entered into negotiations to sell the hotel and assign the ground lease to Jekyll Island Beachfront Hotel LLC, which is an affiliate of Newcastle Hotels and Resorts LLC. Newcastle is a operator of 2 hotels currently on Jekyll Island. They are not an owner of any hotels on Jekyll Island. And in my memo is a little summary of Newcastle provided to us by them. The principals of the proposed lessee have submitted all the required documentation and passed the authority's background checks. Before you is consideration of the assignment. You may deny it, approve it, or suggest other alternatives.
Mr. Chairman, I might add that it's a unique, or thus far for Jekyll Island, it's a unique proposal in that Newcastle is pursuing investors through Marketplace for Investors. It's can be found online, and you can actually go there and you will see the Holiday Inn listed. It's called crowdstreet.com, and it's a commercial real estate investment opportunity. Melissa, I suppose you can explain the fact that Newcastle will be the lead in the ownership group, but they are looking for investors. And it's kind of an interesting concept to me in that it allows persons who may not have the wherewithal to invest in large real estate developments an opportunity to actually invest in a property on Jekyll Island. The minimum investment, I believe, according to the website, is $25,000. And so anyway, it's I know that Ms. Birch Meeks had already mentioned this morning that she'd had a friend contact her asking questions about it. So Melissa, other comments on that?
No, that was a pretty good explanation.
But if you are interested in checking this out, again, it's crowdstreet.com.
Do I go to the motion?
Yes, sir.
All righty, thank you, Counselor. Is there a motion to recommend approval of the assignment of the Holiday Inn ground lease from Georgia Coast Holdings, LLC, to Jekyll Island Beachfront Hotel, LLC? Is there a motion? It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and second in discussion. All right. I'm going to call for the vote, and all those in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Like sign? Okay. Let me make sure we've got that again. All those in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Counselor, I need you again on the Beach House restaurant lease.
Yes, sir. The next couple of items are a little complicated now, but hopefully they'll save us some time on the back end. So just try and follow along with me. Next door to the Holiday Inn, we have the Beach House Restaurant. And I guess I should mention that the Holiday Inn, Beach House Restaurant, and Beachview Club Hotel, which we're all addressing today, they all has some of the same general ownership structure. And that is being split up now with these assignments if you so approve them. And so next door to the Holiday Inn, we have the Beach House Restaurant, and that is currently leased by Georgia Coast Holdings 1, LLC. And they have entered into negotiations to sell and assign the ground lease to Jekyll Restaurant Owner, LLC, which is a wholly owned subsidiary of Jekyll Holdings, LLC. And a primary investor in that is Stonecutter Opportunity Fund. And also, Rio Beachview Holdings is a subsidiary of Rio Partners, everybody following along now, which is owned and managed by Rick Patton, who's a current partner and managing member in the current lessee. So we will have in this property some continuity of leadership. North Point Hospitality will continue to manage the restaurant. So as part of this transfer, the parties reviewed the ground lease and agreed on several revisions. We have drafted a memorandum of understanding for your consideration to address some of the issues with the ground lease. And that includes that we will be increasing the base rent calculation from $2,000 per acre per month to $2,666.67 per acre per month, which is what this board is currently setting for commercial properties. And so that brings it in line with other recent commercial properties. We're removing the broad exceptions to the requirement that the lessee must obtain the authority's approval. Excuse me. And so what that means is we'll have is stricter requirements now that they have to come back before the board to get approval to assign the lease. We have some other issues in there. They have indicated to us that they will be remodeling the restaurant. And so we have limited the current lease allows them to basically shut down operations if they so choose. But given our concern with restaurant operations, especially during the summer months, they have agreed, and I think rightly so, to limit how many seats that they can not use during the summer months while they're undergoing some renovations. It also increases their reserve account deposits. We also call them capital expenditure accounts from 2% to 4% of gross revenue. That happens at the earlier of substantial completion of 2022 construction or their receipt from its general contractor of 100% of the work completed. And why that's important is we want to make sure these properties have money set aside so that they don't become derelict and they're keeping up with modern conveniences and design. It also allows us to approve any subletting they do, and it rescinds the First Amendment. And the First Amendment to the restaurant ground lease had a lot to do with the current at the time, the mortgagor, they had taken out a mortgage. And so it just doesn't really apply anymore. So just to make it clean, we're just rescinding it. The Jekyll Restaurant Owner, LLC, also has submitted all required documentation and passed the authority's background checks. And so there are three things for you to consider today for this transaction: as approval of the memorandum of understanding, which was included in the board memo that you have reviewed, assignment and assumption of the lease, and to authorize an amended lease to be executed without coming back to you, so long as the amendment reflects the intention of the parties as set forth in the memorandum of understanding. Like I said, I know it's a little cumbersome right now, but hopefully this will let the transaction go forward smoothly and quickly.
So I need three motions.
Yes, sir.
All righty. Is there a motion to recommend approving the memorandum of understanding as to the Beach House Restaurant ground lease? Is there a motion?
So moved.
It's been moved. Is there moved and seconded? Discussion.
You want to do a quick roll call, Mr. Chairman, since it's hard to understand the people on the phone?
I am always.
If you'd like to do that.
I'm always in favor.
For all of these. If you want to just do that, since we've got a lot of people on the phone today.
Absolutely. Thank you. I very much, that's normally what I do, as you know.
Yes, sir.
I thought you'd like that.
Yeah. Oh, I do like that.
Mr. Joseph B. Wilkinson, Jr.
Aye.
Mr. Bob Kruger.
Aye.
Mr. Bill Gross.
Aye.
Commissioner Mark Williams. Ms. Joy Birch Meeks.
Aye.
Dr. Buster Evans.
Aye.
Mr. Glenn Willard. Mr. Dale Atkins. Sir, it's unanimous.
Thank you. Motion carries. Counselor, I think the next is I need a motion signing the Beach House Restaurant ground lease from Georgia Coast Holdings 1 LLC to Jekyll Island Restaurant Owner LLC contingent upon execution of an amended lease as set forth in the Memorandum of Understanding.
Yes, sir, and just to clarify, it's just Jekyll Restaurant Owner, LLC. But you don't need to make the motion again, I'm just clarifying that.
Oh, thank you. All righty. So, is there a motion?
Moved.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. And any discussion? And we will please once again do a roll call.
Mr. Joseph B. Wilkinson, Jr.,
Aye.
Mr. Bob Kruger,
Aye.
Mr. Bill Gross,
Aye.
Commissioner Mark Williams, Ms. Joy Birch Meeks,
Aye.
Dr. Buster Evans, Mr. Glenn Willard, Mr. Dale Atkins. Sir, it's unanimous.
Thank you. Now, Counselor, I believe I need a third motion.
Yes, sir.
All righty. Is there a motion to authorize an amended lease to be executed as to the Beach House Restaurant ground lease without additional board approval, as so long as such amendment reflects the intention of the parties as set forth in the Memorandum of Understanding? Is there a motion?
So moved.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Discussion. And we'll do a roll call again on this.
Mr. Joseph B. Wilkinson, Jr.,
Aye.
Mr. Bob Kruger,
Aye.
Mr. Bill Gross,
Aye.
Commissioner Mark Williams, Ms. Joy Birch Meeks,
Aye.
Dr. Buster Evans, Mr. Glenn Willard, Mr. Dale Atkins. Sir, it's unanimous.
Thank you. Motion carries. And next, I believe,
Yes, sir.
Counselor, I need to go to you.
Yes, sir. Next door to the restaurant, we have the Beachview Club Hotel. And it's the same thing. It's currently, well, it's a different lessees. It's currently leased by Georgia Coast Holdings II, LLC, and they have entered into negotiations with Jekyll Hotel Owner, LLC. Same sort of structure as the restaurant, and North Point Hospitality will continue to manage the hotel. Interestingly, this hotel will be franchised as part of the Tapestry Collection by Hilton. And they will be submitting a request to change their name to, as it stands right now, Beachview Club Hotel Jekyll Island Tapestry Collection by Hilton, to the naming committee. The Tapestry Collection inspires travelers to get out and explore the neighborhood and immerse themselves in the local food, culture, and art. After a day of adventure, guests can look forward to returning to the comfort and amenities of each Tapestry Collection hotel. We have also entered into negotiations for a memorandum of understanding to revise some lease terms, again increasing the base rent, which will take effect upon whichever occurs first of any room expansion or January 1st, 2025. And again, at that time, that would bring this property into line with other recent commercial leases. It decreases the date of the first CPI adjustment from 120 months to 60 months, which also brings this lease into line with other similar leases. It actually removes the provision that disallowed an increase or decrease in base rent if the acreage under the lease changed, which I think is important, and we don't imagine that the acreage will change, but as a lawyer, I just like to have our bases covered. And it also limits the amount of rooms if they undergo any renovation. It limits the amount of rooms that can be closed during critical travel times. The principals of Jekyll Hotel Owner LLC have submitted all required documentation and passed the authorities' background checks. Mr. Hooks, did you want to say anything?
I think it's important because there's already a lot of social media rumors about this particular transaction. I think it's important to note that we've had only initial discussion with the proposed new owners regarding the property. When you begin to talk about the collection, what's the collection? Tapestry. It's a very similar situation to across the street where Quality Inn's boutique is the Seafarer, and they allowed them to go back to their name, so it's a Seafarer, and it's part of the Quality Inn chain. And so that part is easily understood. What we've not gotten is we've not gotten any concepts yet as far as any kind of renovations or any kind of even additional rooms. Obviously, if there were to be additional rooms, there are implications there. There are implications in that would have to go through the design development process, which means it would come back before you. And also, there are implications, I think, when you start looking at the future as far as even the golf course master plan or improvement strategy in the future. Because if you remember, there was a golf lodge, a small lodging facility called for in that plan. Well, based on the fact that we just last month had a presentation given to you by RCLCO regarding the site on the south end, that their findings were that perhaps there was not a need at this point for additional rooms on Jekyll, then I think there's going to have to be a lot of discussion about whatever kind of plan may be coming forth here. Obviously, just as we've done in other projects, we'd be looking at traffic impacts and other issues. So anyway, I just wanted to bring that forward. Like I said, we don't have anything from them in writing at all, but I know there's been a lot of chatter about what may or may not be being proposed. And I know it came to me from a neighbor who heard it from someone at Trabuzio's, and so there's a lot of discussion going on there.
Thank you. And so the same motions are before you today to just cumbersome now, move the process along.
To recommend
Later.
approving the memorandum of understanding as to the Beachview Club hotel lease? Would that be?
That would be your first motion.
That'd be the first motion. Thank you. Is there a motion to recommend approving the memorandum of understanding as to the Beachview Club hotel lease?
So moved.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Okay, I'm going to call for the vote.
Mr. Joseph B. Wilkinson, Jr.
Aye.
Mr. Bob Kruger.
Aye.
Mr. Bill Gross.
Aye.
Commissioner Mark Williams. Ms. Joy Birch Meeks.
Aye.
Dr. Buster Evans. Mr. Glenn Willard. Mr. Dale Atkins. Sir, it's unanimous.
Thank you. And I'm now going to need another motion, Counselor.
Yes, sir.
Is there a motion to recommend assigning the Beachview Club Hotel ground lease from Georgia Coast Holdings II, LLC to Jekyll Hotel Owner, LLC, contingent upon execution of an amended lease as set forth in the Memorandum of Understanding? Is there a motion?
So moved.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? I'm going to call for the vote, please.
Yes, sir. Mr. Joseph B. Wilkinson, Jr.
Aye.
Mr. Bob Kruger.
Aye.
Mr. Bill Gross.
Aye.
Commissioner Mark Williams. Ms. Joy Birch Meeks.
Aye.
Dr. Buster Evans. Mr. Glenn Willard. Mr. Dale Atkins. Sir, it's unanimous.
Thank you. Motion carries. And Counselor, I guess I need the third motion.
Yes, sir.
Is there a motion to authorize an amended lease to be executed as to the Beachview Club Hotel ground lease without additional board approval, so long as such amendment reflects the intention of the parties as set forth in the memorandum of understanding? Need a motion?
So moved.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All right, I'll call for the vote.
Mr. Joseph B. Wilkinson, Jr.,
Aye.
Mr. Bob Kruger,
Aye.
Mr. Bill Gross,
Aye.
Commissioner Mark Williams, Commissioner Mark Williams, not currently present, Ms. Joy Birch Meeks, Dr. Buster Evans, Mr. Glenn Willard, Mr. Dale Atkins. Check one more time. Thank you, Commissioner Williams. Sir, it's unanimous.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Board, for bearing with me on those.
No, thank you. And we're now going to move to the RFP 367 to Golden Isles Carriage and Trail at Three Oaks Farm. So I need a motion.
Sir,
Maria will present.
Ms. Humphrey would like to present it.
Oh, yes, please, thank you.
Good morning. As you may remember, this board approved the RFP 367 with the intention of receiving proposals from potential companies that would be willing to provide services for horseback riding services on Jekyll in both the historic district and at the beach site at Clam Creek. The current lease will expire January 12, 2022, and this RFP allowed the JIA to more clearly define the routes and permitted uses while also reducing the overall footprint of the horse operations. Prior to the November 5th, 2021 deadline, JIA staff received 2 qualified bids. The bids received were from Ali Zorn Equestrian Incorporated and the current lessee Golden Isles Carriage and Trail at Three Oaks Farm. The selection committee evaluated and scored each proposal and also conducted in-person interviews. And as a result of that process, the apparent winner is again our current lessee, Golden Isles at Three Oaks Farms. The staff would recommend that we award this RFP to Golden Isles Carriage and Trails at Three Oaks Farms.
So I need a motion.
Yes, sir.
All righty. Is there a motion to recommend awarding RFP 367 to Golden Isles Carriage and Trail at Three Oaks Farm?
Make a motion to be approved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? I'm going to call for the vote. All in favor will signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, like sign? Motion carries. Counselor, I need a second motion, I believe.
Yes, sir. And then Ms. Humphrey will go through those lease terms real quick.
The current lessee that we have was only on a percentage rent lease where they only paid a percentage of their gross revenues. So as part of the RFP, which you just awarded, the JIA recommended that the new lessee would start to pay base rent for the areas that they use on the island, in addition to a smaller percentage rent, which is more in line with the current lessees that we have on the island. The new lease also proposes a move closer to the beach at Clam Creek, so they're not so far away for the horses to the trek to the beach, so it doesn't tear things up as much when they're doing their beach tours. The base rent is proposed to be $23,2767 and 3% of gross sales. Pending legal review of the final lease, staff recommends approval of the lease terms as outlined in the memo I've given you.
So I need a motion.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Is there a motion to recommend approval of the lease with Golden Isles Carriage and Trail at Three Oaks Farm pending contract completion and legal review? Is there a motion?
So moved.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Chair hears none. We'll call for the vote. All in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed like sign? Motion carries.
Sir, if I could just have another quick second?
Absolutely.
Thank you. I would like to say farewell to Melissa, because as everybody knows, she's going to be leaving. And I'm very proud of all the work we've done to strengthen and improve the leases here at Jekyll Island, and I will miss her dearly.
Hear, hear.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Right, operations update, Noel?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I hope to take some of the heavy lifting off of you for a minute.
Thank you.
And run through an operations update. I'm going to take a little different tactic, and I appreciate everybody's comments on the Christmas lights, and believe me, I've been giving that feedback back to staff and letting them know what they've done. But I wanted to take a different tack and kind of explain where we are with the Christmas lights, because we've gotten some questions. And if you look at the numbers there, it's a stark difference from where we were in 2015 to where we are today with the amount of lights. And do I think we're about capped out with lights? Yes. Do I think, like most people think, that they're wonderful? Yes. But I wanted to take a minute to say, if you just look at the numbers and you go see the lights, you're thinking, wow. But this was a plan that was hatched well before COVID. And the plan was to get us to where we had a route on the island to go see lights. Because before you get into a congested one-way traffic situation in the historic district, pretty much only in the historic district, the penguins and the frogs and all the fun stuff on the beach were kind of an afterthought. And not a lot of people got to see those. But everybody would go to the historic district park, get out their cars and wander around, and you couldn't maneuver anywhere in the historic district. So the first part of the plan was to get the purchase from Callaway Gardens here of 12 days to bring connectivity between the beach and the historic district. And the second part of the plan was to complete the circuit as best we could by power that was available down Ben Fortson through the beach village, so you have the route that you have today. And what that would do is, in essence, create a more or less one-way flow of traffic, and we would orderly move through the island and then off the island or back to your house on the island. So that was kind of the plan all along, and it's good to see that it's working, and some people think it's working really well, and others may not think that much, but the traffic on the island is moving in one direction and orderly, and everybody's enjoying it, and that's, I believe, goal met. Another thing that we had on Saturday night, we had a fireworks display, and we've gotten some comments that there was some traffic, and yes, there was. My wife and I came on the island, and we got caught in the backup at the gate, just like everybody else, and it took us 30 minutes to get through. But when you go to these events, you have to plan and think that there will be other people attending. You're not just on an island by yourself. So in response to that, we had a meeting on Monday to try to figure out, okay, that was probably a little more traffic than what we really wanted for fireworks, so what could we do? What can we do next year? What can we do now? Because we have fireworks coming again this Saturday. So short term, we got a hold of Georgia State Patrol, and we're going to have 2 off-duty patrolmen, state troopers stationed at Shell Road helping direct traffic, and at the entrance and exit to the island at Ben Fortson help direct traffic. And then next year, we're looking at possible adjustments to the dates if we have fireworks. So all these things that come along in accordance with the capacity study, we look at it and try to make adjustments. So that's kind of how I would take a different tact on Christmas lights. I also wanted to discuss some information about the campground, and we've heard a little bit about the campground already today, but the campground revenue has risen by quite a bit. And this is not the culmination will be the expansion, but this is a stop along the road in a long-term strategic plan that we put together to try to create our own future at the campground instead of just trying to forecast the future. And that's important because what we were trying to do is expand the availability to a larger segment of the population to be able to come and camp at Jekyll Island Campground. The demographics in the campground were such, it was always the same people all the time, and we were inundated, and we still are inundated with calls, emails, messages. I could never get a reservation at the campground. I really want to come camp on Jekyll Island. So there wasn't a turnover of guests to where everybody could enjoy it equally. It was consumed by the same demographic, and that wasn't fair to not only Georgians that were commenting to us, but other people in the nation and in Canada that wanted to come to the area. So that's kind of part of the plan was to balance the occupancy overall between long-term and short-term guests and create the availability for people to experience Jekyll Island and experience the Jekyll Island campground. Something else I wanted to update you on was some public safety measures that we've been able to maintain and work on improving. We're able to maintain the community rating system for flood rating at a 5, which is the lowest in Glenn County. Glenn County just got pushed back to 6, I believe. And what this is it makes it to where we can reduce and avoid flood damage, support the National Flood Insurance Program, and take responsibility with floodplain management, which conservation shares a large role in, and they do a great job along with our fire department. And what does this amount to by the homeowner on Jekyll Island or the leasee on Jekyll Island? Well, it amounts to a 25% discount more or less on your flood insurance. So that's a big get for you. We were able to maintain a Class 3 ISO rating, which Class 1 is considered the best, and there are very few of them. And this is a direct reflection of what your homeowner's insurance rates are, as some people know. And what does this Class 3 amount to you? It's on average a 42% discount on your homeowner's insurance. That's what this means. Now, what is an ISO rating? An ISO is an independent agency that comes and does an assessment on your system, and it's not just fire suppression. It's the fire department, the fire alarm, and the water system. So the water system, our Jekyll Island Water Department, that's also a third cog in this whole program. And what it does is it looks at the water supply, the main capacity to deliver flow, hydrants, and in the department it looks at mutual aid, planning, training, staffing, and equipment. And then the fire alarm examines how we're dispatched. So you could see that we've done some things over the past year that have contributed to that. We've gotten away from being dispatched by Georgia State Patrol. Now the fire and EMS is being dispatched by Glenn County, and that is quicker response to our mutual aid in case we need it. And we have MOUs that our Director of Public Safety, Dennis Galey, put in force to where if we have an active fire alarm on Jekyll Island and we're dispatched by Glenn County, they're also dispatching a ladder truck if need be from City of Brunswick. And that's part of what would help us increase our ISO rating to a 2 and maybe even a 1. So we're of 722 departments that are areas, communities that are graded by ISO in the state of Georgia, we are in the top 30% or somewhere north of 212. They don't give you an exact ranking, but we're in the top 30% of the state, which is pretty good for, as we say, little old Jekyll Island Fire Department. They're small but mighty for sure. Speaking of water and wastewater, I want to discuss some capital spending. As Jones alluded to, the water and sewer rates have gone up, and some think quite a bit over the past few years. And that was in response to the capacity study, which along with some other data that we participate in, showed that we were undervalued as far as what our water and sewer rates are. And the graph at the bottom right shows you more or less what we've done with some of that money. We've inserted it back in the capital, and $400,000 of it were inserted in fiscal 21 back into this system. And the pictures represent some of the projects that we've done. We've rebuilt gearboxes on critical structures in the wastewater plant. We've installed UV treatment to where all the water that passes through the Jekyll Island wastewater department before it enters the Jekyll River is UV treated, and that's why you see manatees up there sipping out of the effluent, is because it's been UV treated and it is clean enough to drink. So we're doing things like that, and generators improvements, which we didn't have generators at all there at one time. Now we have generators, so when the power went out a couple of weeks ago, I think that was, we actually went on generator at the wastewater department. And a lot of the lift stations went on generator automatically, and that's a great thing to have. And I will note that, as Jones mentioned earlier, leveraging grants. We put in for American Recovery or CARES Act money, almost $2.5 million request to the state. And we've been notified that we've made it through the first couple of hurdles and that it's pending. So we don't know what exactly that means, the word pending. It could mean that it's pending that we got it or pending that we didn't get it. But we know we haven't been eliminated from the process yet. And we're hoping to take that and reapply that back to the wastewater infrastructure. A couple of project updates. The Campground Expansion, which we've finally gotten to the public comment period of the Environmental Assessment Procedure, the EAP. So the EAP was done a month or so ago. It was reviewed by the participants at the EAP, and the EAP is online now for public comment. Feel free to take a look at it on the website and make any comments you wish. It's open through, I believe, the 22nd of December for comment. The Campground Expansion, the tree survey was done, complete. It's now being put back onto the CAD where we could see where it links up with the buildings and the structures. And we've had a third round recently of adjusting some campsites and one minor road adjustment to miss some significant trees to get out of their drip zone and their root system to where trees and campers alike can have a good time at the campground. And the last project is a glitzy one. This is the public safety complex. We have a full set of design development drawings available as of just a couple of weeks ago. And this is the architect's rendition of what the public safety complex is going to look like. And the location is on Shell Road, which was, as a reminder, determined in great part by the ISO rating, where they wanted the fire EMS station to be within 1.5 miles of the largest population center on Jekyll Island, which reaches most of the residential areas, all the hotels from the Hampton all the way up to the Holiday Inn, the Club Resort Historic District, our Water Wastewater Department, and Summer Waves. So we've checked that box. So the location of this public safety complex and the programming that's inside of this building are in response to the ISO rating, so we can possibly get that from a 3 up to a 2, which would result in more savings for the residents as far as their homeowners insurance and better protection to the public, whether you live here or you're visiting Jekyll Island. So I know it was a whirlwind, mouthful of operations update, but a lot of good information, and I appreciate your time and letting me run through some various things for you and kind of give you an update on what's going on in operations. Thank you.
Now, before you leave that project, board members, you'll remember that we're waiting to see if, in fact, this particular project, if our portion of it is going to be in the governor's budget. And hopefully it will be. And that will make the process a lot easier if it is. But we don't know that yet, so.
Surprise, I had one more slide. We all forgot about Man-O-War. Well, we didn't. We've been actively working on it with contractors, and we have finally a commitment from the lining company out of Indiana to come line this pool. This is it. This is a picture of the real thing in mid-January. So we already ran some water through it just to kind of see how it behaved, and it behaved well. So once we get this Man-O-War lined, we'll be ready to put in sidewalks around it, and it'll be ready for action come May. And I'm sorry about the surprise slide, but it'll be a surprise when it's actually up and running. So thank you again for your time there.
Thanks, Noel. The counselor, I don't see any action requirements.
No, sir.
Oh, okay, thank you. Jones, the 2022 board meeting dates.
Yes, sir. Those are the dates that we presented to you at the board meeting last month. We didn't hear any comments as far as board members having conflicts, so we're proposing that those dates become the official dates for next year.
So I need a motion.
Yes, sir.
Is there a motion to recommend approval of the proposed 2022 board meeting dates as recommended by staff? Need a motion.
So moved.
Moved. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Just going to do a voice vote on this? A voice vote?
We'll just do it.
Yeah. All those in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any opposed? Any opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimously. And call on Jones Hooks.
Mr. Chairman, just a quick update of a few things. There are a couple of items, one especially interesting from the Michigan Golf Journal. It looks so uninviting as far as playing golf in Michigan for the winter. It says, let's head south. There's a two-page spread there about Jekyll Island, so we shared that with you. And the other update as far as the golf improvement strategy is the archaeological study. The draft report is still being completed, so hopefully we'll have some more information for you next month on that. I wanted to share with you a couple of disappointing destination items that have come to my attention recently, and these are in your blue folder today. One is called Course Correction, and it is out of Travel and Leisure magazine, and it's interesting, and I shared it with Ben Carswell because it's actually talking about, it's looking at carbon offset schemes that are being utilized, especially in this country now, to look at offsetting emissions that are associated with travel to a destination. This particular one is looking at the Gunnison Crested Butte area in Colorado. And it was a pilot program. The bottom line was it didn't prove to be as successful as maybe they would have hoped, but it did prove to be a good effort in a worthwhile direction, and so they're looking at some revisions. But what I marked here to share with you is the paragraph on the second column of the second page. It says, a new era is dawning in America's mountain towns. And I think we should also say in our beach towns. Because it says, as COVID-19 spurred a rush outdoors, the increasingly tangible effects of climate change have begun to invert the logic of marketing to visitors. Now tourism associations in the busiest mountain getaways, or I'll say beach areas, have begun managing visits in addition to simply promoting them, often with sustainability as a prime concern. And I know that we've talked about this because in our marketing department, Joy, you're aware that Alexa and her team, for instance, we know that one of our most successful areas is the Driftwood Beach area. And every tourism listing and publication says, hey, that's a #1 beach, go there. So our marketing department, we don't even promote that anymore. And so I just thought that this was an interesting article, that there were some parallels there. And I do have been looking at the carbon footprint issue and how we might get engaged in that. The other, on the flip side, is an article that appeared in the Morning Brew, which is an online update publication. And it was a stat that just was amazing to me, showing the other side of the pandemic. Because while Crested Butte and places like Jekyll Island that you can drive to, we've had the issue of, wow, more people than we've known, than we've expected. If you look at Bali, Indonesia, this is an amazing statement. Just 43 international travelers visited Bali, Indonesia during the first 9 months of this year. 43, compared to 6.3 million who mobbed the island in 2019. That was an amazing stat, I thought. So obviously we don't want to be in that situation either way. We don't want to have their overwhelming mobs nor their no visitation. But I just think as you look at the topic of disappointing destinations, you need to look at both extremes. I mentioned a few minutes ago the RCLCO marketing analysis. We did recommend after your last board meeting that they update their numbers because that study had been done over the past several months before it was made public, and some of their numbers didn't reflect the realities of the pandemic. And so they are in the process of doing that, and we do expect to receive that. As soon as we do, we'll send it out to you, but I would expect that would be an item for your review at the January meeting. I also am going to share with you that Camp Jekyll, we had one of our quarterly meetings with the Camp Jekyll operators, which is Georgia 4-H, and things are better. They're more on the Bali side of the pandemic because you know what has happened within schools and school field trips and that sort of thing. Their business basically has been coming from third-party business that has come their way. Doing over 10,000 students through the Jekyll Center in a year and more, and right now they're at about 1/10 of those usual numbers. And so they're looking and hoping that things will begin to change there. They are eligible for the CARES Act, and they are looking at some submittals there. One of the other projects that there's an article in your blue folder about is fire extinguishers in rental properties, and the fact that a fire extinguisher just recently, our fire chief gave it credit for having saved a property from going up in smoke. And that's just one more thing that I think we can be proud of, and you can be proud of as a board, the fact that we've moved to licensing our rental properties so that things like fire extinguishers are required and part of the inspection process. One other study, we've talked about a lot of studies today, one other study that I would like to mention, as Maria has said, today is Melissa's last board meeting, and we really hate for Melissa to be leaving us. She's with her husband moving to Charleston, and we appreciate the job you've done. You've done a great job, and I think I speak for all of your colleagues that we have thoroughly enjoyed working with you, and even when you said no, and I mean no, we appreciated it and we understood, and so we appreciate the fact that you may be petite, but you also can put us in our places very quickly. But so as one parting item, the code revision project, GMC, why don't you update the board on that, Melissa?
Thank you, Jones. Yes, sir. So we are still undergoing the code revision project. I knew it was going to be a mammoth undertaking, and it did not disappoint. We are currently reviewing some very, very initial drafts. They're not even complete drafts yet. Some of it is still in outline form. Some of it we still have to, pull the usable parts from the old code. So it's still very messy. We're making staff comments on it, going back and forth. And we're actually meeting with GMC tomorrow Our initial plan was, well, our initial plan was to have it completed and done by this board meeting. That is clearly not happening. It's become even more massive than I thought. And so our revised initial plan was to have a public input session. Once we have some decent first drafts in January. That's still our goal, but I would not be surprised if even that gets moved out. We'll figure a lot out more out tomorrow when we meet with them, kind of how far along we are and what they think can be accomplished in the next couple of weeks, especially with the holidays. So we are still moving along, and again, we're hoping to have this done by March or April of 2022.
You don't want to change your mind, do you?
I have thoroughly enjoyed my time here, Chairman and Board and staff. And I am very sad to leave. It's really has absolutely nothing to do with Jekyll. And in fact, Jekyll was a consideration on my husband not taking the job in Charleston because I enjoy my position here so very much. But we are much closer to family. And so it was the right move for our family, but I'm very sad to leave. Thank you for the opportunity.
That concludes our report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Chairman's report, I will just say once again, I talk to lots of people regularly and here and in the Golden Isles and Atlanta and so forth. And once again to the staff, despite all the problems, the circumstances not of your making or our making, you all have been remarkable. And the fact that you are working so hard, particularly at this time of year, to give families lifetime experiences and memories, I can't thank you enough. We'll open the floor for any public comments. Public comments are limited to 3 minutes for each person. Okay. Oh, yes, please.
Good morning, Mindy Egan, Jekyll resident and representing Initiative to Protect Jekyll Island. I think we'd all agree that there's been a lot of great things that have happened on Jekyll in the past 10 or 12 years. I'd like to circle back to Jones's comment about the timing with the golf course master plan and going back to when it first started looking at the golf course in 2015 with the National Golf Course Foundation. I remember distinctly at that time the public comments included not going ahead with golf course changes until it could become part of the master plan, so the master plan could inform the golf course plan. And I also...
Mindy, I think you need to look at that because every RFI called for a golf course master plan. There is a difference in an island master plan and a golf course master plan.
Okay, well then I agree with that, and I agree that it should have been a golf course improvement strategy, and it would have taken away that feeling that was then created and caused this confluence that we have now with the master plan and the golf course plan going on simultaneously. Also, there was public input that suggested that happen. And I also remember, and I'm not trying to be contentious about this, but there was a time when the board wasn't moving slowly, and I can remember the chairman at that time saying, we've got to get moving on the golf course, which created some of the uncertainty and concern we have now about development, which the points I'd like to make that I had prepared. First, the 2018 Carrying Capacity and Infrastructure Study which includes recommendations, should be used to develop a formal capacity plan to help determine what type and how much, if any, additional building may take place on Jekyll Island in coming decades without further undermining Jekyll's main character, its unique character. Second, criteria should be established to monitor the extent to which the balance between nature and humankind is being maintained in order to ensure that additional development or redevelopment is halted before it's too late. Third, the JIA's efforts to mitigate the effects of overcrowding on Jekyll deal with only the symptoms rather than the cause of the problem. Fourth, the lack of controls on how recreational land classified as developed may be redeveloped undermines the statutory intent of limiting development within Jekyll Island State Park. Fifth, a cap should be established on the number of additional Jekyll residences that may be built on both redeveloped and previously undeveloped land. Sixth, the density and extent of development that has taken place on Jekyll in the past decade has caused the public to believe that there are no limits on redevelopment, creating a feeling of uncertainty at Jekyll's future. The proposed redevelopment of golf course recreational land for commercial purpose has heightened this belief, which circles back to my initial statements. My time's up, Anna? Thank you. I have these comments, and if you could give them to members that aren't available.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Any other? Yes, sir.
Good morning. Dave Kyler with the Center for a Sustainable Coast. I've spoken to you before about various topics, but before I start my formal comments, which I have copies of for you, I just wanted to say a few extemporaneous things about what I observed here today. I don't want anything I'm saying to be sort of categorical condemnation of anything discussed here today. This is very promising indications of awareness of the needs of balance on the island. I wanted to say something on the marketing portion, but I didn't get a chance. Rather than saying fabulous Jekyll Island, might I suggest you say uniquely beautiful Jekyll Island. Fabulous to me would apply more to Las Vegas or Disney World or something, but just as an indication of your awareness of the natural amenities of the island, how important that is to its appeal. Anyway, so I just wanted to give you a little background on me and why I think what I do, what I have to say. 50 years ago, in the early years of the worldwide environmental movement, the landmark book, Limits to Growth, became central in shaping my core values as a graduate student in environmental planning and policy. Limits to Growth used innovative computer modeling to predict with impressive accuracy, as it turns out, some of the most troubling predicaments we're now facing as massive human activities damage the world's natural systems and threaten Earth's inhabitability. I encountered the challenge of environmental limits throughout my life's work, first in 2 decades or nearly that, as a regional planner at what is now Georgia's Coastal Regional Commission, and subsequently over the past 24 years working as an environmental advocate at the Center for a Sustainable Coast. Limits are particularly significant on a barrier island such as Jekyll, where geographic boundaries impose absolute constraints, limits that are now being further restricted by rising sea level caused by climate change and other impact of human activity. On the regional planning staff to control and mitigate growth, we commonly advise local governments in zoning matters used to manage development, practices that are conspicuously lacking on Jekyll Island. What is especially troubling on Jekyll is the absence of accountable controls that prevent threats to the health and sustainability of treasured natural resources that are fundamental to the quality of life and thus to the unique value of the island as a state park. Attempts to protect environmental quality by limiting the portion of land eligible for development, which has been mentioned here this morning, have been defeated by the changing use of those developed areas, leading to escalating density, including higher and larger buildings that blatantly conflict with the tranquility for which Jekyll was renowned. To serve the legislative charter establishing Jekyll Island State Park and honor obligations to the public, the JIA must adopt specific limits on development which can be and will be legally enforced.
Sir,
Without those limits, the master plan update fails to achieve its intended purpose. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. We can have, oh, go ahead.
Good morning and happy holidays. My name is Susan Inman. I am the coastal advocate with a nonprofit organization, 100 Miles. We appreciate the additional acres of undeveloped land committed in the master plan update, but would like certainty as to how those lands will be permanently protected as undeveloped. We, like many of our members, visitors, and residents to the island, remain concerned about the increased density and the need for priority actions to maintain the quality of experience here and the natural character. While we appreciate the comments and promises made to not overdevelop, why not add these comments to the master plan update? Today, you could possibly still amend the master plan update to specify future uses of the developed acreage as required in Georgia Code 12-3-243.1 by voting to add a land use map for activities within developed acreage. Or if more time is needed to develop such land use plan, we encourage you to implement a temporary moratorium on development, excluding the Buccaneer property, while such map and commitment is developed. 1,063 people, 182 of these people are Jekyll residents, have signed an online petition that will remain active until the end of the 2022 legislative session, asking our state legislators to support such a temporary pause on development. To close, the People's Island is feeling the growing pains, and it deserves a better plan to keep the balance before it's too late. Thank you. Happy holidays.
Thank you, Susan. Okay, we can do a break if anyone needs it. Okay, then let's move forward. Gotta have a quorum. I now open the December 14th, 2021 board meeting of the Jekyll Island Authority. Call the roll.
Yes, sir. Mr. Joseph B. Wilkinson Jr.
Here.
Mr. Bob Kruger.
Here.
Mr. Bill Gross.
Here.
Commissioner Mark Williams.
Here.
Dr. Buster Evans. Mr. Glenn Willard.
Here.
Mr. Dale Atkins.
Here.
Ms. Joy Birch Meeks had to leave, and Mr. Tripp Tolleson is absent. Sir, you have a quorum.
Okay, then let's go ahead. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of the November 16, 2021 board meeting?
Second.
Any discussion? I'll do a voice vote. All in favor will signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. You need a request for approval of the Firefighter Supplemental Pay Grant. Board members have received a Finance Committee recommendation to approve the Firefighter Supplemental Pay Grant. Is there any further discussion before a vote to accept the recommendation? I need a motion.
Make a motion to approve.
Okay. Is there, oh, I'm sorry, I don't need a motion on that. No, we can move right straight ahead. All those in favor of the Firefighter Supplemental Pay Grant will signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any opposed, like sign? Right, motion carries. The board members have received a Human Resources Committee recommendation to approve the loss prevention policy update. And is there any further discussion before a vote to accept the recommendation? I need a motion. Need a motion?
No motion needed.
No motion.
No motions needed. Thanks,
sir.
Counselor. Okay, so all those in favor will signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, like sign, motion carries. The consideration of the R-2021-7 resolution adopting the 2021 update to the 2014 Jekyll Island Master Plan. I need a motion to, board members have received a committee of the whole recommendation to adopt R-2021-7 resolution adopting the 2021 update to the Jekyll Island 2014 Master Plan. Is there any further discussion? Okay, I want to do a roll call on that. All those in favor will signify by saying aye. Aye.
Mr. Joseph B. Wilkerson Jr.?
Aye.
Mr. Bob Kruger?
Aye.
Mr. Bill Gross?
Aye.
Commissioner Mark Williams? Dr. Buster Evans? Mr. Glenn Willard? Mr. Dell Atkins? Sir, it's unanimous.
Okay, thank you. Passes. Counselor, do I need a motion on?
You do not need a motion, sir. You've received for the Holiday Inn lease.
Okay. All those in favor will signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, like sign? Motion carries. Let's see. Let's go to.
And now we have a couple of complicated motions that we went through in committee. And so we can go through those, and that the board members have received recommendations of those, and we can go through each one individually. So we're looking.
Second is needed.
We're looking at the first vote,
which is
on number 6,
which is the approve the memorandum of understanding
as to the Beach House Restaurant
ground lease. All those in favor will signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, like sign? Motion carries. And then we have a committee of the whole recommendation, excuse me, to approve the assignment of the Beach House Restaurant ground lease from Georgia Coast Holdings 1 LLC to Jekyll Restaurant Owner LLC. And all those in favor will signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, like sign? Motion carries. And then we have a committee of the whole recommendation to authorize an amended lease to be executed as to the Beach House Restaurant ground lease without additional board approval, as long as such amendment reflects the intention of the parties as set forth in the memorandum of understanding. And we don't need a motion or second. Any other discussion? Okay. All those in favor will signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any opposed, like sign? Okay, Counselor, this is the Beachview Club hotel lease?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, board members have received a committee of the whole recommendation to approve the memorandum of understanding as to the Beachview Club hotel ground lease. Anything else? Okay. No motion or second is needed. All those in favor will signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, like sign? Motion carries. And then we have there are a bunch of them in here.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
The board members received committee of the whole recommendation to assign the Beachview Club hotel ground lease from Georgia Coast Holdings, is that 2?
Yes, sir.
LLC to Jekyll Hotel Owner LLC. Any discussion, further discussion? No motion or second is needed. All those in favor will signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, like sign? Motion carries. Okay, the board members have received a committee of the whole recommendation to authorize an amended lease to be executed as to the Beachview Club Hotel ground lease without additional board approval, so long as such amendment reflects the intention of the parties as set forth in the memorandum of understanding. No motion or seconds needed. Any further comment? Any questions? All those in favor will signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Okay, this goes back to the RFP 367. Board members have received committee of the whole recommendations to award RFP 367 to Golden Isles Carriage and Golden Isles Carriage and Trail at Three Oaks Farm, and to approve the lease terms pending legal review and contract completion. Any further discussion? No motion or seconds needed. All those in favor will signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, like sign. Motion carries. All right, consideration of proposed 2022 board meeting dates. The vote is required, but no motion or second is needed. Board members have received a committee of the whole recommendation to approve the proposed 2022 board meeting dates. Is there any further discussion before a vote to accept the recommendation? Chair hears none. No motion or second is needed. All those in favor will signify by saying aye. Aye.
Motion to adjourn?
Finally, your favorite motion, Mr. Chairman.
Move to adjourn, Mr. Chairman.
Well, I figure that's not a bad idea.
That's an advance note, vote.
Do you have any final public comments?
No.
No.
Sir?
Any more public comments?
Oh, yes, sir. Good call.
Righty.
You can continue to ask for public comments.
I don't hear any. Okay. We're always willing to listen, you know that. Okay, is there a motion to adjourn?
Yes, sir.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor will signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. I'm showing 11:41 a.m. Tuesday, December 14th, and we are adjourned. Thank you.
Merry Christmas, happy holidays, everybody.
Yes, it is.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I've never done one, but you can now say that you.
Yeah, we're crowdfunding. Yeah, right.
Chairman, can I get your John Hancock?
Absolutely.
So that is the first crowdfunding.
No. Wasn't me. Huh? It wasn't me.
Usually you ask me cool questions like that.
Yeah, yeah.